Strength is not just about fists or fights, it's about choices. At Ridgewood High, a new student named Khari Johnson arrives with a past of constant moving and an unshakable resolve. What starts as a typical high school power struggle soon turns into a battle far greater than himself. This is a story of resilience, redemption, and the power to break cycles. Let us know where you're watching from and what time you found this video in the comment. Lockers were slamming, friends were getting together, and the pungent odor of cheap cologne was hanging in the air. Ridgewood High School was humming with the normal first-day commotion that occurs on the first day of school. In contrast, the exhilaration that Khari Johnson felt was eclipsed by the burden of being the new child in the class. Once more, Khari was not your typical transfer student, since he was also tall and slender, and carried himself with an air of calm assurance. In a society that seldom provided stability, his mother, who was a single parent, had moved more times than he could count. He had moved more than he could count. On the other hand, things were different this time. He had reached the end of his time spent in visibility. He felt the glances as he went to class. Some of them were intrigued, while others were nasty. A group of young men, all of whom were wearing Letterman jackets, were smirking with a sense of superiority as they leaned against the lockers. Jake Mercer, the head quarterback for Ridgewood High School and the unofficial king of the school's social structure, was positioned in the middle of the group. "Look what we got here," Jake snarled as he stepped across Khari's path. "Look what we got here. You've been defeated, young man." Despite the tightening of his jaw, Khari continued to walk. The whole thing was familiar to him. Small acts of bullying, such as shoves in the corridor and racial remarks spoken just loud enough for him to hear, were the beginning of the bullying. Nevertheless, Khari was not shaken. Over the course of his training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, he had spent years perfecting his body and mind for the sake of discipline rather than devastation. Never throw the first punch was the most important instruction that his late father, who had served in the Marine Corps, had imparted to him. Always remember to toss the final one. Next, there was the ambush in the locker room. Immediately after his gym lesson, Khari discovered that Jake and his team had trapped him. There was a heavy layer of perspiration and irritation in the air. "You think you're tough, don't you?" Jake spat out his gas and cracked his knuckles. "Let's see how tough you are when you're outnumbered," said the speaker. In order to regain his composure, Khari breathed gently. However, he had hoped that this would not be the case. However, there were certain individuals who were only able to comprehend a single language. A hefty lineman by the name of Brett, who was Jake's right-hand guy, was the one who delivered the initial punch. Khari evaded, his reflexes being as quick as a razor. Over the course of a single smooth move, he swept Brett's legs out from under him, causing him to fall to the tile. After that, Jake jumped forward and began striking violently. After successfully blocking Jake's punch, Khari reacted with a strong elbow to the ribs and then twisted Jake's arm into a submission position. The quarterback let out a painful moan as he buried his face against the wall of the chilly locker. The other lads halted, their eyes widening in surprise. "Who else is there?" In a tone that was calm yet menacing, Khari inquired. There is no sound. As the conflict went on, the news spread like wildfire. Some people referred to Khari as a hero, while others referred to him as a nuisance. However, one thing was very clear: the bullying had ceased. Because he felt ashamed, Jake avoided him. But Khari was not finished yet. He understood that true power was not only about retaliating. Rather, it was about altering the course of the game. Anyone who has ever experienced a sense of helplessness was welcome to join the martial arts and self-defense group that he established. The culture of the school began to change gradually. As a result of a humiliating suspension and an obligatory apology, even Jake started to have a new perspective on the situation. Khari stood tall at the graduation ceremony, not just as the child who had triumphed over the bullies, but also as the one who had shown to them a more effective approach. As a result of the fact that the most great warriors are not the ones who win wars, but rather the ones who put an end to them. After a week had passed after the incident in the locker room, Khari became aware of something peculiar. Jake Mercer was not just avoiding him. He was frightened. Not because of another conflict, but because of something more fundamental. In the late hours of one evening, as Khari was leaving the library, he came upon Jake sitting on the football field of the school by himself, looking blankly at his phone. Khari went ahead and entered the room against his better judgment. As he maintained his distance, he inquired, "Are you doing well?" Jake jerked his head and then laughed. "What are you doing? Coming to put an end to me?" The head of Khari was shaken. No, just curious as to why a man like you would want to spend Friday evenings by himself." There was a moment of hesitation before Jake mumbled something under his breath. "What is it?" He exerted pressure. Jake yelled. "I said, you wouldn't understand," yet his voice was trembling throughout the situation. As Khari sat down next to him, she paid no attention to Jake's look. "Give me a chance." They were silent for a considerable amount of time. At long last, Jake offered his words. The phrase, "my old man is the real bully." Coach Mercer, Jake's father, was not only a highly regarded football coach at Ridgewood, but he was also a notorious dictator. He was a former collegiate linebacker who had a short temper, and he had spent Jake's whole childhood humiliating him, punishing him, and applying unrelenting pressure in order to shape him into a winner. It was Jake who stated, with a hollow tone in his voice, that he was the one who urged him to put you in your place. It was said that you posed a danger to the unity of the team. Khari's hands were tightly clenched. He was aware of what it was like to grow up in the shadow of a demanding father, but as a result of his own upbringing, he had learned discipline rather than harshness. When Khari stated, "So you take it out on everyone else," he was not making an accusation, but rather expressing a reality. Jake chose not to respond. He had no reason to do so. Coach Mercer arranged an optional training session for the following Monday, which consisted of a series of challenging workouts that were aimed to punish the squad for the defeat they had suffered the previous Friday. Around the halfway point, Jake passed out and began throwing up due to weariness. Coach Mercer instead yelled out, "Get up," rather than halting the game. "You should be ashamed of yourselves." Suddenly, something snapped in Khari. One of them moved in between them. "It is enough." Everyone on the squad became completely numb. Mercer, the coach, was never questioned by anybody. There was a reddening of the coach's forehead. "Is there anything you would want to say, Johnson?" The Khari did not flinch. "I agree. In no way are you a leader. You are nothing more than a bully who has never matured." The atmosphere became charged with electricity. The coach, Mercer, leaped up. It was not a battle that took place after that. Rather, it was an expose. The furious swing that Coach Mercer was about to throw was avoided by Khari, who then utilized his momentum to trip him, causing the coach to fall to the ground. The group let out a gasp. The blow was not made by Khari. On the contrary, he stood above him, his voice composed but authoritative. "You want to be respected. You have earned it." In spite of the humiliation, Coach Mercer rushed to his feet, but the fire in his eyes wavered. The reality was shown to him for the very first time. His son was staring at him with hatred. His team was running away from him, and a black child whom he had attempted to break was standing higher than ever before. The repercussions were rushed. Coach Mercer was placed on administrative leave until an inquiry into his aggressive behavior is conducted. Instead of continuing to play for the squad, Jake decided to join Khari's self-defense group. Khari served as a student advisor during the implementation of obligatory anti-bullying training. That was mandated by the school board. With graduation, however, the true win was achieved. As Khari made his way across the platform, the audience erupted in applause, not just for him, but also for the transformation that he had inspired. Jake, who had become his improbable buddy, presented him with a folded letter. "Thank you for not giving up on me," it said on the card. After a number of years, Khari went back to Ridgewood to work as a youth mentor, teaching young people that power is not found in one's fists, but rather in one's decisions. Moreover, Coach Mercer, who had become sober by this point, was observing the audience and softly applauding, simply because knockout strikes aren't always enough to win certain confrontations. By giving them a second opportunity, they are won. At Ridgewood High School, Khari's self-defense club had achieved legendary status one year after he had changed the school. Children from all throughout the region, including those who had previously been bullied, sought to train under him. On the other hand, the change in power did not exactly make everyone pleased. Ridgewood Elementary School's old football opponents, Crestview Academy, had a reputation for being even more vicious than Ridgewood. As soon as their star linebacker, Dante the Tank Vaughn, learned of Khari's influence, he saw it as a direct danger to his position. "Y'all really let some karate kid punk your whole team?" In the course of a regional championship game, Dante made fun of Jake. Pathetic, a smile played over Jake's face as he became more confident and ripped with muscle. "You don't know Khari." The smile on Dante's face gradually disappeared. "Maybe I need to meet him." When Dante and his group burst in, they were accompanied by Crestview's wrestling coach, a grizzled former mixed martial arts fighter called Brannick. This occurred 1 week after Khari's club had been having an open mat session. He cracked his neck and added, "Heard you teach kids how to fight," as he spoke. "Let's see if you can handle real competition." There was complete silence in the room. This was not only a challenge, but rather a power play, as Khari was well aware. If he were to back down, the reputation of his club would be severely damaged. Because he battled, he put everything on the line. He took a big stride forward. "You wish to find a match? That's fine. We do it my way, which is regulated sparring. And there are no cheap shots." A sneer appeared on Brannick's face. "Deal." The word quickly spread. Students from both institutions were crammed into a warehouse that had been abandoned on the outskirts of town by the time Friday night rolled around. There are no instructors, no referees allowed. There is nothing but raw anxiety. The fluorescent lights were flickering, and Khari and Brannick were walking around each other in a circle. In addition to being larger and more powerful, Brannick has decades of expertise. But what about Khari? It was wiser to him. It was a hard-fought battle. Khari ducked, countered, and utilized Brannick's momentum against him as he tried to take advantage of the momentum that Brannick had gained. He locked in a rear naked choke in the last seconds of the bout, which resulted in the former boxer having to tap out. The audience went into a frenzy. On the other hand, when Khari took a moment to catch his breath, he became aware of Dante's agitated gaze as he spoke to his team. This was not in the end. The next morning, Khari's locker was spray-painted with racist obscenities, indicating that it had been vandalized. What's worse, Jake had not been seen. Suddenly, Khari's phone rang. "The number is not known. It is a video." Jake, who was confined to a chair and abused. The voice of Dante rumbled across the speaker, saying, "You make my coach look humiliated. Now, It is your turn to pay. By oneself, or your boy's condition deteriorates. Khari's blood became ice cold. At this point, pride was no longer the only factor. We were in a war. Khari was aware that traveling by himself was a suicide attempt. But should we contact the police? It's too dangerous. Therefore, he contacted the only people he could rely on, which was his club. According to Mai Lin, a tenacious junior who is capable of outgrappling anybody, we are not going to let you do this by yourself. They want a fight? Tyrese, a former gang member who owed Khari his life, said, "They want to fight? Let's give him one." During the night, Khari and his men launched an assault on the boathouse belonging to Crestview, where Dante was keeping Jake. It was not a fair battle that ensued after that. This was a recompensation. Khari moved like a tempest, disarming Dante's thugs with pinpoint accuracy, rescuing Jake, and putting Dante himself in a corner. On the other hand, rather than striking, he did the one thing that Dante had not anticipated, and he extended his hand. According to Khari, this is over now. Are you willing to continue the fight? That's fine. Contrary to this, however, at long last, Dante, battered and crushed, came to an understanding. His role was not that of a villain. Rather, he was only another child caught in a cycle. After many months, Crestview and Ridgewood amalgamated their self-defense programs, and Khari and Dante began teaching together as co-class instructors. A. Brannick? After acknowledging his own shortcomings, he became an advocate against the practice of hazing. Is that Jake? Similar to Khari's father, he enlisted in the Marine Corps service. When Khari was standing at the helm of his most significant class to date, he came to the realization that even the most powerful combatants do not manufacture adversaries. Allies are formed by them.